With, and we are live. Here we are. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Reading Between the Crime Book Online Book Festival, the brain child of Lindsay Adams. Great festival. Hope you've been enjoying this weekend. And tonight's treat is a total treat, because we have the new and emerging talent. And again, if you are joining us for the first time and you've never met any of the authors that are on here tonight, can I please urge you to get hold of their work? You are in for the ride of your life with some really top-notch writing that, considering these are new and emerging writers, you wouldn't believe it. Honestly, great quality and fabulous writing. So without further ado, let me introduce our motley crew tonight around the screen. First of all, Noelle Holten, author of Dead Inside. That was her debut novel, but more recently, Dead Wrong, that was published. Thank you, Noelle. Thank you. Here's two she made earlier. That's beautiful. And I do believe there is a third, is there not, that is due out later this year? Dead Perfect.
Yes, in October this year. So
fabulous. So again, there's a trilogy there to be got into. It's wonderful. You are, other than being an amazing crime writer, you are an award-winning blogger at Crime Book Junkie. And she's also a PR and social media manager for Bookouture, leading digital publisher in the UK. She previously worked many years as a senior probation officer, has 3 degrees, philosophy, sociology and community justice, and a master's in criminology. So very much writing from knowledge there. And again, just to come back to that first novel, Dead Inside, and it was with that first novel that she introduces to DC Maggot Jameson. And Noelle's a little bit reluctant to read to us, but I'm hoping later that I can tease a little bit of reading out of her, because honestly, it's so beautiful what you do. So welcome, Noelle. I hope you're well this evening.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
It's so good to see you. Next on my list is Sharon Bairden. Hello, Sharon. Welcome.
Hi, lovely to be here. Lovely to see you all.
And I miss you so much. We've not been able to gather at festivals, so doing it online, it's the next best thing. So sure. Sharon's debut novel, Sins of the Father, published by Red Dog Press, and it'll be out later this year. Is that right, in November?
November 27th.
Wonderful.
This is not a book. This is my phone cover, but
it's beautiful. It lets us see what we're going to be getting into, so that's great. Sharon's a service manager in a small local independent advocacy service with a passion for human rights, and by night she has a passion for all things criminal. I'm hoping that's literary criminal.
My lips are sealed, Jackie. My lips
are... She lives on the outskirts of Glasgow, 2 grown-up children, a grandson and a golden Labrador and a cat. She spends her time doing many things bookish. Her blog, if you're not familiar with it, Chapter in My Life, is a really powerful blog out there. And we're going to talk tonight about you crossing over the fence to becoming a writer. So welcome, Sharon. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Next up, Andrew James Greig, author of Whirligig. Do you have a whirligig there for us, Andrew?
I do.
Look at that glorious piece there. Fabulous. Published this year, 2020, March, by Fledgling Press. And I love the fact that it's that notion from Shakespeare's Twelfth Night, the whirligig of time brings its revenges. Beautiful.
Well,
beautiful. And we also have to say at this point that your beautiful piece of writing there has been longlisted for the 2020 CWA John Creasy New Blood Dagger Award. Many congratulations. Yeah, glorious. Well done.
Thank you very much.
But not only that, you've been longlisted for the Bloody Scotland McIlvenney Prize for 2020 as well for that writing. So wonderful. Well done, sir.
Yes, I think they got the wrong person, but there you go.
Shh, don't tell them. It's fine. It's fine. You originally worked in aerospace engineering and combined that with sound engineering before moving into writing, and not a native of Scotland, but like many of us who see the beauty and the reason for going north of the border, you're there now. You have a mixture of books, you play music, you explore the great outdoors. And I love that you say you do all that with your best friend, who happily is your wife. So that's lovely. So far. Again, what is going to happen after tonight? Who knows? So welcome, Andrew. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's a delight to be with you.
Last but by no means least, Gordon Kerr. Welcome, Gordon. How are you this evening?
I'm great, thank you. A bit cold.
So lovely to
here.
Is it a bit chilly with you?
Yes, it is. It is.
Let's see if we can make it warmer with the conversation. I'm sure we will. You are the author of many non-fiction books. Searching your back catalogue. No, never, never, never. Such fabulous insight to moments in history, to various different parts of the globe. But sadly, we don't have time to discuss that amazing body of work. We're going to discuss tonight a novel that came out last year, The Partisan Heart. I just want to ask, was this your first piece of fiction?
Yes, it's my first novel, yes. I've written plenty before, but never published.
So thank you for being here with a new piece that we can get into. From the town of East Kilbride, you graduated from Glasgow University. You've lived in France before working in the wine trade. I wished you'd bought samples for us all tonight. You've worked in marketing, for book selling and publishing, Waterstones and Bloomsbury. So you are a man of books. There is no doubt whatsoever. And I've also read that you live between Dorset and southwest France. Where do we have you tonight?
I'm in Dorset tonight because I can't really go to France.
I know. Badly. We're all a little bit limited by the things that are happening. But anyway, we have you, and we have you all here. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to start off by asking Gordon, would you read a small passage for us to whet our appetite?
I certainly will, yes. This is very early on in my book, and it's really a kind of a description of the area in which the book is set and the history of it. It's a very, hopefully, it's atmospheric, the area, and it's very important to the nature of the book. So this is in a place, a made-up place called Beldoro in North Italy. Oh, sorry, no, it's in a place called Dolcino in North Italy. Michael, night falls in layers in the Valtellina, especially as autumn shakes off its sprinkling of brightly coloured leaves and the valley adopts the greyness of winter. The arrival of darkness seems to exonerate each day, no matter what has filled it, no matter what indiscretion, what cruelty, what moments of doubt have distinguished it from all the other days that have gone before or will follow relentlessly after. For Michael, however, these last few days had been empty. His eyes too were vacant, although they should at that moment have been focused on the view of the valley from the balcony on which he stood. It was a view for which tourists would pay good money. It consisted in the near distance of a town, its thin, weak lights just beginning to flicker in the growing twilight. Into the far distance in either direction, villages were strung along the length of the valley like the pearls of a necklace. The Valtellina, unlike other valleys that dangle longitudinally from the arc of the Alps, stretches east to west, about 100 kilometres in length. Once its settlements had been sparse, groups of houses gathered round the few bits of grazing land that fed the cattle that kept their owners just above subsistence level. But as times got better and as roads began to connect the farthest flung corners of the valley with the outside world, so people had moved towards the mouth, where it and its neighbour, the Val Chiavenna, descended into plains that led to the glittering waters of Lake Como. Tourism had opened up the valley. The Milanese had arrived in their Alfa Romeos and Porsches, building chalets and renovating old rundown houses, turning the cattle sheds on the ground floors into garages for their gleaming chariots. And the villages had rapidly grown into towns, while new settlements grew where before there had been nothing. Supermarkets arrived, things of wonder to people starved for centuries of the luxuries enjoyed by the inhabitants of the bigger towns and cities. Michael watched columns of smoke rise from chimneys the length of the valley. Drifting into mist miles away to the west, Lake Como lay in oriental stillness, its gleam just visible beyond the red roofs of the countless villages. At this hour, 7 o'clock, steamers would be making their final incisions of the day in the lake's glass-like surface, late commuters and tourists huddling at the rails like notes on a stave, as the evening's gentle breeze began to stir the flags on the grand hotels and restaurants on the far side of the lake. That'll do.
Beautiful. Thank you. You have transported us totally elsewhere. That is thank you. Thank you, Gordon. I will come back to you, but I'm going to start moving around the authors now. You've set us up nicely to talk about the notion of place and setting. And I wanted to ask you when you began your journey into writing crime fiction. So I'll start with Sharon. When you started this journey into crime fiction, did you know the location where you would be setting your story, and what was it and why?
Well, everybody who knows me knows that I'm Scottish, that I love Scottish crime fiction, and I love all things Scottish. So obviously it was going to be in Scotland. Living just outside Glasgow, my novel is set partly where I live in Kerr and partly in Glasgow. And yeah, for me, it's where I know, it's where I was brought up. It was where, it's where I grew up. It's the East End of Glasgow, which is where I was born. And I couldn't do it anywhere else. I think it's close to my heart, and it's where I wanted it to be. So
brilliant, yeah. Thank you. And so when we read you, do we really get that sense of streets and places that exist?
Not so much in this one. In the book that I'm writing just now, there's more of the streets. This one is very much about the characters in their head and the things that they're going through. So you get a sense of perhaps some of the areas that they live in, but there's a small part of the East End of Glasgow where you get a sort of sense. Anybody who comes from the East End of Glasgow will know where that is. And know what I'm talking about. I tried to mix it up a little bit so that it wasn't all real places, because there's that kind of worry that you start to offend people if you're setting really dark stuff in the place that they live. So yeah.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, it's best not to frighten people too much of what might be around any corner. Yeah. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. Andrew, if I come to you, did you, for Whirligig, did you choose a fictional or a non-fictional space? What did you create there?
Yeah, basically it's set in Fort William, but for reasons of not wanting to offend the good residents of Fort William, it's never actually spelled out in the book. I chose Fort William because at the tender age of 18, I just failed my A-levels quite spectacularly, and I was living in Wales at the time, and I decided to stick my thumb out and hitch all the way to Fort William, where I worked for the Scottish Forestry Commission for a bit before I headed back down again. Winter was coming, so a soft southerner can't cope with the winter in the Highlands, I can tell you. So yeah, that's basically the reason why I set it, but it's never spelt out, although you can infer it from some of the towns and cities that I mentioned.
And given that, has anybody who lives there, has anybody come back to you and say, I recognise this place, I know what you're doing?
No.
Hopefully they won't. Thank you for that.
Pleasure.
Noelle, for this trilogy that we have so far, that all centres around dead, is a place, do you set these novels in somewhere that you know, or did you decide to do, you know, a total creation of a fictional space that you felt you could develop these tales in?
I actually set it in Staffordshire because that's where I spent the last kind of 10 years, well, 7 to 10 years of my work in probation. So I knew the police stations and, you know, social care and how things work there, which is important to my storyline because it's a multi-agency team that works together. And also because Staffordshire is, you know, you've got the towns and the, you know, little villages and stuff, but you've also got quite a big rural expanse, which is perfect for hiding bodies. So, but I have made up fictional town names. So although Staffordshire features in it, the towns are not real.
Thank you, Noelle. So Gordon, back to you then, and back to that reading. Obviously we're there in Italy, but I read that your novel has a split timeline, does it not?
Yes, it does. It does. Part of it is set in Italy in the Second World War, at the time when the partisans were getting together and fighting a kind of lonely battle against the Germans who were occupying big chunks of Italy. And the other part is in 1999, when, I mean, it's quite complicated actually, but when a woman is killed in a hit and run accident, and there's also a kidnapping, and it all obviously comes together rather sweetly at the end. But it, you know, it's a place which is really dear to me because I have family there, and the story kind of suggested itself to me through the years that I've been visiting the Valtellina in Italy. But it's very difficult to run two different timelines, I have to admit. But hopefully I managed it.
I think you did, from what I've seen, and hats off for doing so, and the way you bring it, you know, together at the end. So thank you for that. Now, I'm just looking at the comments that are coming through on the chat, and so this next question it's from Jackie McLean, great Scottish crime fiction author, and it's to Sharon and to Noelle. So Sharon, I'll ask you if you'll take it first. And she's asking, having been involved in crime fiction for a long time as bloggers, were there any surprises when it came to your own publication journey?
Yeah, I think as a blogger, and just as somebody who always wanted to write but never had the confidence to do it, as a blogger and aspiring writer, I think I still had a picture of authors as being these people who lived in big fancy houses with their typewriters at their windows looking out onto this view, and the words just flowed, and this book came out and all was wonderful. And then I met people who wrote, and I realized they were just normal people like me, and they had jobs and they had shit going on in their lives. So yeah, I think that wasn't. Yeah, it was a surprise, and I suppose it gave me a bit of confidence. And again, it wasn't a surprise, but the actual writing, because you have because I had this picture of people writing and not even thinking about the editing, and Noelle will know because she beta read my first book, and she was brilliant, came back with really good constructive feedback, and I'm like, oh my god. So yeah, there was lots to learn, lots of surprises, but it was a really positive journey, a really positive journey, just in terms of support, the community, and Jackie. I used to go to Jackie's crime writing group in Glasgow and Waterstones, and the support she gave me was fantastic. She was like, come on, you can do this. So yeah, I don't know if that answered her question, but
That's a gorgeous answer. Thank you. Noelle, what about you in the from one side of the fence to the other?
I was really surprised about the amount of support I actually got. You know, I thought, you know, I knew people from stalking them at crime festivals and reading their books and reviewing their books. But when my debut came out, I was just overwhelmed at the amount of support. And Sharon was brilliant. She got a whole load of authors, Martina Cole. Gosh, there was just so many, I can't even remember. And she did this huge countdown, and I was in tears for probably about a week because I just never imagined how much support there would be. Because I work in publicity and for a publisher, a different publisher than I'm published by, I kind of knew what to expect. But yeah, it's a lot of hard work. You really have to come out of your comfort zone. If you're like me, I think people meet me and think I'm really confident, but I'm not. I would prefer to kind of hide in the shadows. A little gin helps. But you do have to kind of come out of that comfort zone and sell yourself, which is really, really difficult. But everybody is just great and supportive. I've never met a more supportive community than crime writers.
That's beautiful. That story is echoed so often when you go to festivals and book launches, the notion that this is a community, and whilst everybody wants to move forward, the idea of bringing others with and supporting others, I think it's one of the most exciting things that I love about this community. So thanks, Noelle. Thanks for that. Andrew, if I may, I wonder, could you bring us your reading now? Would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll set the scene. I've got a minister in his church, and he's getting on in years now. So he has to do the bell ringing, and unfortunately the bell comes down on top of him, which is a bit unfortunate. So he's fairly dead. So I'll just read a bit from there. In the distance, another siren could be heard, the Doppler shift lowering as it approached the church. An ambulance slid to a halt on the gravel, not expecting to be impeded by the growing crowds, and honked impatiently to be let through. The vehicle crept forwards towards the church doors, with the crowd parting in a suitably biblical manner before it parked between the gravestones. The crew exchanged brief words with the fireman and turned off the flashing lights. This was going to be the second body bag of the week. PC Lamb stared at the crimson puddle already congealing under the bell tower door. Bloodied footprints led the way to the church porch doors, held wide open to allow access to the compressed air hoses powering the saws, cutting through the hinges and lock holding the door in place. It seemed like sacrilege to him, destroying the medieval door, and each attempt to force it open caused greater damage. A floodlight cast an unforgiving illumination on the scene, catching the crucifixion in stark outline where the figure of Christ appeared to be dancing in the farmer's shadows, bringing back visions from his first MDMA-fueled rave. A loud crack from splintering wood brought him back to the present as the recalcitrant door timbers parted, and his stomach contents forced their way up his throat in response to the charnel house now revealed. Sarge. He stood outside in the graveyard after telling the fireman he was seeking a stronger radio signal, but glad to be out in the fresh air. Sierra 4-5, this is Whiskey Tango. Do they not teach you radio technique at that police college, PC Lamb? Over. The sergeant's lugubrious tone helped to calm his nerves. He took a couple of gulps of air, glad that he'd managed to keep his breakfast down. Sorry, Sarge, I'm at St. Cuthbert's. There's been an accident. Over. Thank you, Sierra 4-5. We've already been notified that there has been an incident. That's why you were sent there. Can you provide a level of detail above the obvious? Over. PC Lamb frowned at his radio transmitter. You could imagine the Sarge doing a whiskey tango. Feeling more upbeat, he continued. It's the minister. Looks like the bell came down on top of him. Over. What's his status? Over. PC Lamb had seen his status, and it wasn't good. He's dead, Sarge. He's a dead ringer. Why'd he said that? Something told him the Sarge wouldn't appreciate his humour. Over, he added quickly. Your career be over if I hear you say that again. Secure the scene. We'll have to send in the DI. Just wait there and keep anyone not wearing a uniform out of the church. Over and out.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And yeah, you can, even from that short reading, Andrew, you can tell why it's your work, you know, has received the acclaim so far it's received. I love that section about Christ dancing in the shadows. It's, yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
Yes, that's my entrance to the kingdom of heaven, denied now, but there you go.
You'll be in good company. There's many of us there. Don't you worry.
Between you and me, the more interesting people are down there, I think.
Anyway, I have a quick question from Kevin Ferguson.
Oh, yeah.
And it's primarily to you, Andrew.
Okay. Hello,
he loves the cover to Whirligig.
Yep.
And he says, have you considered releasing a printed framed edition of it?
Well, I haven't actually. I'll mention that to Claire at Fledgling Press. I'm sure she'd appreciate another means of earning an income during this pandemic. So
yep, why not? Every possibility.
Go for it.
Absolutely. Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Good idea. It's a lovely cover. Yeah.
So after that reading, and quite a gruesome reading, I wonder if we could turn to the murder and mayhem in your stories, and of course without giving plot away or anything like that. I wonder if you could tell us, and Gordon, I'll start with you if that's okay. Can you tell us about the crime that's committed or anything that's grim and grisly contained within the pages of your novel?
Well, the great crime that's committed in the book is a crime of betrayal by several different people, I guess. Yeah, in fact, I'm not going to think about it. There's about 4 or 5 betrayals, and those all lead to mayhem of some kind or other. The main guy in the modern part of the story ends up being accused of 3 murders, which he had nothing to do with, but the police and people have been led to believe he did. The most gruesome bit, I guess, is where he goes up. And I don't know if you know, in Italy, they have, in the mountains, they tend to have little chalets up in towards the top of the mountains, where they used to take the cows in the summer to take them to the fresh pastures up there. And so these chalets are now places where people have holidays and whatever. And my man is searching for a guy up there, and he stumbles into a bit of a charnel house, a guy who's had his throat cut and has been lying in a bath of his own blood for some days, surrounded by a kind of a necklace of flies, I guess. That's about as gruesome as it gets, but there's a few other bits, you know.
Oh, awful but gorgeous in the same breath, and the description that you bring even to us, you know, out with the pages, it's perfect for a Saturday night. I love it. Thank you, Gordon. Bearing that in mind, then, Sharon, can you raise Gordon's grimness?
I don't know if I can do a necklace of flies. I like that though. That appealed to my dark sense. Sins of the Father is the story of Rebecca Finlay, and Rebecca sets out to get her man to marry Lucas, but she's not marrying him for love. She's marrying him because she wants to destroy him. But it soon becomes quite clear that there's somebody else out there looking to destroy Lucas as well, but they're also wanting to destroy Rebecca. And I suppose after the prologue, part 1 of my story is told in the past and part 2 is in the present. And in the prologue, Rebecca wakes up. We meet Rebecca while she's next to the body of her dead mother in their kitchen. And Rebecca is 10 years old, and it's quite a gruesome murder. And there's a wee bit of I don't want to give too much away, and I'm new to this game, so I'm very wary of what I'm saying here. Yeah, so the murder of her mother is pretty gruesome, but there's not too many murders in the book, but it's more. I think Sons of the Father's more about relationships, toxic relationships, trauma, adverse childhood experiences, and the impact that has on people. So it's a dark book. It's not going to cheer you up on a Saturday night anyway. But
Which is just what we want. Yeah, I love that notion of the darkness, and I think waking up at that age in that situation, I think that's a fine rivalry for that necklace of flies. This is working well. And we've got a burnt clergyman and a necklace of flies. A very sad place for a young girl to be in. And so if I can move to Noelle, can you raise those stakes that we've had so far?
I don't know, perhaps. Dead Wrong, which is out now, is about this fellow who confesses to crimes, and he names his victims. There's 3 victims that he names. And he's been in prison for about 2 years, when all of a sudden the dismembered remains of his first victim across Staffordshire, and she's only just been killed. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I actually had a case in probation where a fella did this. This was like when I first started out in probation. So I was a newbie probation officer. And yeah, he dismembered his girlfriend and scattered her all over. And I thought, ooh, imagine if that happened, but the bodies just started appearing now.
Oh, honestly, I think we now have such a great amalgam of grimness. Viewers, if you're watching this late at night, do hope that you sleep well after this. And we've really only touched the tip of the iceberg with what these fabulous authors have been creating. Doug Sinclair has just commented what Gordon was mentioning. He says the notion of a necklace of flies. He says, can he use it for a title of a book? Would you let him borrow that?
It's copyright.
It's copyright. Excellent. Love it.
As of this moment.
As of this moment. And I just want to say a huge, huge hello to Sybil Westbrook, who's watching us over in Los Angeles. So your fame is out there in the States, guys. So give Sybil a wave, because she's a big crime fiction fan. So to my next question, thank you all for answering about the grimness. But now I'd like to get to know your main protagonists. So it's a little bit like an elevator pitch, but you know, there's no pressure here, and it's, you know, you've sold the books, they're there, so that's okay. Just relax and talk to me about a main protagonist and what they mean to you. So Andrew, do you want to set us off? Tell us about your main protagonist.
Yeah, okay. The main protagonist will be my DI, James Corstorphine, a man who's lost his wife to cancer some years previously, and in a way he's accompanied by her ghost all the way through the book. The other person, I guess, that I have some sort of relationship with, in a personal sense, would be PC Lamb, who we heard a brief excerpt from previously, because he has this unerring knack of coming out with entirely the wrong words at the wrong time, which are humorous, but they're totally wrong in the wrong place. So it's something I tend to do as well. So I can kind of sympathize with him. You're muted.
Thank you, Andrew.
All right.
I got too excited. I got too excited about what you were telling us, and I was thinking 2 protagonists for the price of 1. That's very good. I like the way you did that. Sharon, could you come in and tell us about one of your protagonists, who they are, how they function, and what they mean to you?
Okay, I'm going to stick with Rebecca again, and I know I gave a wee bit of a hint about our background there. Throughout the book, Rebecca's not particularly a likable character. And I really like unlikable characters. I like people that you don't like. But obviously, when you get to know what's went on in Rebecca's life, there's a little bit of, there is some empathy, but I would hope that there's some sort of confusion in the reader's mind, like, okay, am I rooting for this person or am I not? And I suppose I like Rebecca because I'm I suppose because of my work and just in terms of life, the sort of stigma around mental health and what people live through, the experiences they live through and what impact that has on them and how they react and how they behave, I find absolutely fascinating. But I think, I suppose that's why she means so much to me, because in the nature of my work, I work with a lot of people who perhaps some folk would use that terrible word, challenging people, but I don't think people are challenging. I think what they've lived through is challenging. So Rebecca's kind of close to my heart for that.
Thank you. I love the way you say that it's not the people that are challenging, but what they have been through in life and those experiences. And that's really important to bear in mind. Thank you for talking about that. I'll move to Gordon, because in your book there are a number of people, but who most would you like for the viewers to get to know before they open the pages?
Well, I guess I should say the main character is a guy called Michael, because he's going to be in my second book. But I really would like to talk about the young Italian partisan who was in bits of the book. I think that what I like about him is you follow the kind of arc of his life, and he appears in a large part of the beginning of the book and then appears again at the end. He made the fatal mistake of falling in love with the wife of his commander, who turned out to be a traitor, but all the same, it created chaos in their lives. It's no harm to say she came to a dreadful end, and he had to take revenge on various people, and he comes back at the end, and I think that he dies at the end, and I think that passage is one of the bits of writing, of all the writing I've ever done, that I'm actually proudest of. I'm most satisfied with that. He's a very nice, innocent character who lives a quiet life. But as I said somewhere else, I think that part of the war was about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And he was a character who did extraordinary things, but was a very ordinary man.
I love the notion as well of taking revenge, because the person that you love has, met, a not pleasant end. It resonates with me. I think I would do the same. But enough of my criminal tendencies. If Noelle, would you come in and tell us about? Will you tell us about Maggie, or do you want to talk to us about another character?
Yeah, I'll tell you a bit about Maggie. She is a DC. She's been a detective for just over 10 years, and she works in Dead Inside. She's seconded to a multi-agency team that works with different agencies like social care, probation, drug and alcohol teams and services. So when she comes back to her own team in Dead Wrong, she wants to kind of keep incorporating that, because of the fact that when it comes to solving crimes and stuff, it's important that other agencies' involvement is taken on board. So I just love her. I always wanted to be a cop. I ended up as probation. So this is my chance to kind of live vicariously through Maggie. She has a few quirks of myself. Some people like her, some people don't. She can be a bit know-it-all, but not in an arrogant way. She just is a bit of a geek, so she likes to know it all. And she sometimes does things that, are questionable, never illegal, but questionable. So, she'll kind of go in above and beyond to solve a crime. So yeah, I just love her to pieces. I love writing her. She's constantly in my brain. So yeah, that's her.
Yeah, again, thank you, Noelle. And again, for readers, if you haven't had a chance to get to know Maggie, get those books, because she is one heck of a police officer. Noelle, before you go away or mute yourself again, will you just come back? Because that wonderful fellow crime writer, Michael J. Malone, a little bit back, he wanted to know what it was that you were drinking.
This is because you know I can't not have some sort of gin when 20's in the room. So I got a bottle of WKD pink gin flavor. So it's not too high in alcohol so that I don't end up a bumbling fool.
Thank you. So thank you for that. There you go, Michael. Now you know what she's imbibing. Not as intoxicating as you may have thought initially. I think it would be a perfect moment. Sharon, could you bring us a little reading?
And it is a little reading. It's the prologue, and the prologue is set in 2018, and it's from Rebecca's point of view. And it's getting dark in here, and I don't have my glasses to hand, so bear with me. It began the same way as always, the feeling that something was lurking in the room, a dark shape casting its malevolent shadow over her, the feeling of black beady eyes feasting on her, sharp fingers pinching, gently at first, then becoming faster, more furious, until their claws were digging into her skin, stretching at her muscles until she was sure that they would tear. In a bid to escape, she bit down hard on the unknown creatures, feeling their small bones crunch against her teeth. But her bites didn't register. They didn't stop the relentless grabbing, crawling over her, touching her body, making her squirm, crawling up onto her chest until her breath almost left her. Struggling against them, she fought with every nerve in her body to break free, pushing until she felt herself being propelled forward, faster, more furious, the wind sounding a mighty roar, escalating to hurricane force, its violence pulling the skin back from her face as she desperately tried to soar to freedom. Vibrations pounding in her head, increasing until the point that she felt that every bone in her face would shatter, but still the creatures chased, grabbing at their prize and unwilling to let go. Her heart pounded in her chest so hard that it felt as though it was about to break free. She was sure she was going to have a heart attack or a stroke right here. Such was the intensity, until finally she forced herself to stretch out her index finger, forcing it forward, screaming to break free, and whoosh, it was gone, just like that. The storm had ended, and as she watched, the small black hands still grabbing slowly faded away, dimmed in their ferocity, and it was quiet again, still. Forcing her eyes to open fully, taking deep breaths, her heartbeat slowing down, she reached out and grabbed the torch lying next to her bed. Turning it on, she slumped back in the pillows as she checked her hands and face for the telltale marks of the teeth and claws, although she already knew there would be none. In the safety of the light, her breathing slowed as she gradually became aware of her familiar surroundings. The weight lifted from her shoulders, and the demons retreated back to wherever they came from. She could feel something warm brush up against her, rough fur as a wet nose burrowed into her palm. It was a dog. She gave a start as the memories filled her head. She turned. The cold, stiff body of the man was lying next to her, curled up on his side, his dead eyes never leaving her. She opened her mouth to scream, but nothing came out as the dog lay down and howled.
Darkness, indeed,
Dark
Sharon.
in there. It's very dark in there.
But so beautifully put down on paper. You know, I've heard it before, but it's still, yeah, the stuff of nightmares, and all the questions raised of who is this, what's happened, and why, and you just want to go further in the book. Thank you so much. Now, so here we are, relatively at the start of the journey into being crime writers. but I wanted, yeah, Angela Martin has just commented, Sharon, yikes, hair on end. So yeah, it's working its magic like it should. I wanted to ask about the moment of that first crime book, it getting published, and was it a simple journey, or did it take a while for that text to be accepted and for it to make it out there to the public? Andrew, do you want to set us off on the journey of Whirligig getting published?
Yeah, but I don't expect it's an ordinary journey. I wrote Whirligig last year. In about 6 months, I guess. Never written a crime book before in my life. I've only just recently started writing at all. And I touted it around a few publishers and a few agents, and they weren't very interested. I don't quite know what happens with agent slush piles. I've got a suspicion, but I understand they must get a huge number of manuscripts from total unknowns. So I don't, I completely understand where they're coming from and how the system must work. But I was lucky in that Claire Kane from Fledgling Press read it and jumped on a train to Dunblane, where I live, and signed me up there and then for it. And then was also good enough to enter me for a couple of awards as well. So I've been very lucky, to be honest. I appreciate that, and I know a lot of people can spend years and years trying to get books published. So yeah, mine isn't an ordinary story. And my first ever book that I wrote, literally the year before that, I self-published because I think the genre of fairy tarte noir just doesn't exist yet. So,
but it will. Believe me, it will.
Well, you never know. I carry on with it anyway.
Please do carry on with that. But also, again, what a wonderful story. That everybody's journey to publication that I can see is very different. There's no formulaic way of this happening, and for you, yeah, it's been like, wow, and
it's a bit of a whirlwind.
Yeah. And so thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Gordon, I wonder if you'd take us on your journey.
Well, I'm also very lucky, I guess. I mean, I've worked in the world of books since the early 1990s. So I'm connected, I guess. I know people. I've written a lot of non-fiction books, so I know a lot of publishers. And the lovely people who published my book, Muswell Press, are both people I knew for many years. And the book took me quite a long time to write, and God only knows how many drafts I did of it. And I had almost given up on it. It had actually been shown to a few people and had almost got there, but never quite did. And then I revisited it a few years ago, a couple of years ago, and rewrote chunks of it. And really, just as an afterthought, sent it off to these two ladies who run Muswell Press, and they came back almost immediately. Saying obviously it needed work doing, which I knew it would, but also being really enthusiastic about it. And as a writer, that's all you want, is someone to be really enthusiastic about your work. And it's been an absolute joy, because I've been on the other side of the fence, and I've run events and been involved in festivals, but to be the person who is the event and being the person who is the subject of the festival is quite extraordinary. And I've had a real ball the last couple of years. So it's one of the best things in my entire life, and I'll carry on trying,
I really hope you do. I mean, it sounds that there's a second book.
Yes, I'm about a third of the way through. I've had to, unfortunately, I make a living writing as well. So I've just finished writing a short history of coffee, which is out early next year. It's part of a series of short histories that I do. So if you want to know anything
somebody
about
mention coffee.
There we go. So I had to put the novel aside to earn some money, but I'm back into it full time now from Monday. onwards, and hopefully I'll finish by Christmas.
Excellent. Please do. Okay, please do. Yeah. Thank you, Gordon. So Noelle, for you, especially somebody knowing the industry very well, that journey to that first publication, was it short? Was it long? How did it happen?
I again was quite fortunate. I didn't have to spend years and years and years writing and asking, and submitting. I went to Graham Smith's and Michael Malone run Crime and Publishment every year, and I had written the prologue to Dead Inside, and I shared it with them, and they both said, "Oh, this is really powerful. You've got to write this book." So I went away. That was in 2017, March, and I went away and I wrote the first draft for Dead Inside by May of that year. And then I kind of put it aside for a bit because I was still working in probation. And no, actually, I just started working for Bookouture then. Then I kind of wanted to let it sit because I didn't know what was going to happen with it. But I got it polished up, and a friend of mine, Emma Mitchell, she did a fantastic job of editing it for me. Attended Crunchman again the following year, 2018, and pitched it to Karen Sullivan of Orenda Books. And Karen gave me her red card to say, submit this to me. And I thought, oh my God, which kind of gave me the confidence to submit it elsewhere. So I went off and left it again for a bit because I'm a bit of a chicken when it comes to stuff like that. And I attended Harrogate 2018, and an editor I worked with at Bookouture said, "Oh, I've got a friend at Killer Reads. I'd like to introduce you to him, and you should pitch your book." And I was like, "Oh God, don't do this to me." But she did, and I pitched to him. That was on the Saturday, and he contacted me the Monday and said, "Can you send me the full manuscript?" So I did, and I submitted to a few others in between. And the following Monday, they made me an offer. And then I got a few other offers, but I went with Killer Reads, who are now one more chapter, because Finn, who was my editor at the time, was really passionate. And I could tell that he was invested in the story and saw a really good direction and the same direction, not a lot of changes. There's some changes, but not a lot. So yeah, it was one of those things where you kind of pinch yourself and think, God, did all that really just happen to me? And I never for a moment do I ever take that for granted, because I know how hard it is to get in the industry and to get your book seen by people. So yeah, I'm forever grateful for being forced to pitch my book in Harrogate.
Yeah. Again, it comes back, I think, to the notion of a community, a set of people that are there saying, come on, come on, do this, take a leap. Just have some courage and put that forward. So 3 really positive stories so far. The wheels have turned, things have happened. Sharon, was it the same for you? Did it, are you one of these, oh my God, it's just happened? Or are you it's gone on for years for me to get this published?
This is where you're going to see that Noelle and I are twinnies, okay? Obviously, my writing journey hasn't went on for years. Always really keen to write, wanted to write, didn't have the confidence, attended a few classes, etc. Went along to Harrogate 2 years ago and entered the Linwood Barclay First Line Prize that Orion were running. And got a phone call when I was in the pub with Noelle to say that I had to go up because I'd won a bottle of whiskey, a typewriter whiskey, and I was like, right, okay. Went away up and I'd actually won the prize for the first line. So Linwood Barclay gave me his typewriter, it wasn't typewriter whiskey, and gave me a copy of his book and says, now go write the book. So thought, right, okay, I'm going to do this. Noelle encouraged, not nagged me, but encouraged me to go along to Crime and Publishment. Went along there. Graham Smith, because you get the opportunity to pitch your book at that point, and my book wasn't written, so I was like, no, I don't want to do this. And Graham's like, no, you're getting in there and you're doing this. So Graham made me go and pitch my book. which was really positive, got really good feedback. I wasn't ready to submit anywhere. Went away, finally wrote the book, sent it out to beta readers. Emma Mitchell at Creating Perfection done the editing for me, subbed it to a few places, got an offer, but also got an offer to go down and pitch to DHH Literary Agency in Liverpool last December. So I went down, the agent was brilliant, gave me really, really good feedback in terms of how she thought I should develop the book. So I came back and I rejected the offer that I'd been given to rewrite my book, but then subbed the book to the same publishers again, hoping that they didn't think I was a diva. Thankfully they didn't. So yeah, Red Dog. So yeah, I was very lucky as well. 2 years, and I'm delighted that Red Dog have taken my book over the moon with my publisher. So yeah. So yeah, 20s, same places, same.
I mean, but beautiful stories from the four of you, and I think they are stories to encourage and inspire for people who are considering, the path. And not everybody will have the same path, as we've said before, but 4 authors gathered here that are telling stories of making progress in a relatively short amount of time. But then you think of somebody like Anne Cleves, who was writing a long time before getting. So again, it all depends. Again, there's no magic formula. Now I'm aware of the time, and of course there's a 4th person who needs to do a wee reading for us, and the question is, would she be so kind as to do so, Noelle?
Okay, I will.
Thank you. Bless you. Because she was reluctant, but it needs to happen.
Well, okay, I'll read just a bit from chapter 1 of Dead Wrong, which is currently out now. Okay, so, are you dangerous? Lorraine danced around the hall playfully. He frowned. To her, he looked unsure whether she was serious or flirting. The party had been epic, and she was still buzzing, cocaine in her system. Tilting his head, he stared directly into her eyes. Do I look dangerous? He caressed her arm. The goosebumps rose on her skin, and she wondered whether he was toying with her. Her body shivered with excitement. You seem okay to me. Can't be too safe these days, though. Of course not, sweetheart. But I'm a pussycat, can't you tell? He placed his hands on her elbow and began directing her towards the stairs. A knock on the door made them stop. Are you expecting company? She pouted her lips, hoping that he would get rid of whoever it was quickly. Only you, love. Have a seat through there. He pointed to the living room. And make yourself comfortable. I'll take care of this. She watched him as he made his way to the front door. He looked through the peephole, his hands clenching into fists, his body stiffening. What the fuck? He muttered and stepped outside. Although she heard raised voices, she couldn't make out what was being said or whether the mystery visitor was a man or a woman. Wonder what that's about. She didn't want to be caught eavesdropping, and when she entered the living room and saw the bag of white powder on the table, she knew what she would prefer to do. Lorraine walked over to the couch, sat down, and made herself comfortable. Within 10 minutes, he returned to the room. Everything okay? She tucked a lock of hair behind her ear. Yeah, fine. Shall we get the party started? He sat down beside her and caressed her leg. She reached across him, picked up the plastic bag of white powder and shook it. Can we have a bit of this first? Oh, babe, I've got something better in mind for you. A little something special. He bent over, opened the small drawer at the front of the coffee table, and took out a needle filled with what she assumed was heroin. I'm not so sure about that, hon. I prefer a bit of sniff these days, if I'm honest. Gear doesn't sit well with me anymore. She rubbed her forearms. Come on, babe, don't be like that. I thought you trusted me. I promise. This stuff is out of this world. It'll make you feel so good. She thought for a moment, imagined the needle piercing her arm and a warm glow consuming her. You only live once. Sorry about the language. He smiled as he wrapped the tourniquet around her arm, choosing a vein, tapping the needle twice before inserting it into her arm. That's right, babe. You only live once. The world shut down around her. She lay back on the couch and let the gear take over. When she finally came around, she was tied to a bed, her eyes and mouth covered with some form of material bag. The stink of urine and sweat filled her nose, and the low, gut-wrenching moan she heard echoing off the walls told her she wasn't alone.
Oh, Noelle, for a Saturday night, honestly. Please, everybody watching, do make sure if you're journeying somewhere tonight, watch who's out and about or who you might be spending an evening in company with. I am very, very aware of the time, sadly. I have been in the most deliciously dangerous company this evening. New emerging authors whose work is a delight to sample. It just remains for me to thank Gordon Kerr, Sharon Bairden, Noelle Holten, and Andrew James Greig for spending this evening with us, talking about their work, revealing a little bit more about themselves. I wish you all every success as you continue writing. Andrew, in particular, got to give you an extra shout out with those nominations there. May the force be with you. And yeah, thank you everybody for either watching this evening or watching later. And Lindsay, it's over to you. Thank you so much for organising this panel. It's been a blast with these people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm just going to switch that one off. Sorry about that. It just went completely off there for me. So I've had to change over to my backup iPad. So tomorrow is another day. So we've got #Edinburgh Crime, which has Val Penny. It's now Ed James instead of Vicky Clifford, Leslie Kelly and Peter Ritchie at 1 o'clock. Then at 3 o'clock we've got Highlands and Islands Crime with Mark Kirk, Helen Forbes, Alan Martin and Myra Duffy, chaired by Jackie again. Then on at 6 o'clock, we've got UK Crime 1 with Kate Medina, Nick Quantrill. It's now it's now Alex Nye instead of Graham Smith. Unfortunately, Graham can't make it, and Paul Toolin, and that's Kaz Masterson of the UK Crime Book Club. And then it's UK Crime 2, and it's Emma Salisbury, Mark Newman, Pamela St. Abs, or Pammy Bale as a children's author, Dougie Brimson, and that's against Kaz that's chairing that. So thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you all tomorrow again. Thank you so much for being part of this. It's been so inspirational, and I can see that a lot of people, was it Doug A. Sinclair said the crime writing community is kind and loving and nurturing and inspirational and just bloody wonderful, and I want to second that opinion, because I think even as a blogger who isn't a writer, I mean, the amount of authors that wanted to be part of this was only meant to be a couple of events today and tomorrow. This has turned into a Friday one, and I'm hoping with the success of this to make this a yearly thing, or even every other month, just a wee thing, because I've just loved this every minute of it. It's been bloody hard work, but yeah, it's just been great. Thank you so much, guys.